Please join me in welcoming to the stage, Note Sanker!
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Ken and I have been through a lot over the past 9 years. We went everywhere together. Going to the store, going to the suburbs, going downtown, even going to work. Ken would be there with me. Whenever I needed a ride, I could always count on Ken, for the most part. Some of my favorite times spent with Ken were the long road trips we'd take. Long drives, windows down, wind blowing, just listening to the radio. Every once in a while, a song would come on, I'd turn it up full blast. I'd start singing at the top of my lungs. Call me maybe. Don't act like you've never done it. There would be no judgment from Ken. Even on the coldest wintry nights, Ken would be there to keep me warm. This may start to sound a little weird by now. People figured out that Ken is my car. He's a 2000 Mitsubishi Galant, 4 doors, tannish, champagne color. Nothing too fancy, but strong, classic look. Some of you may know what it's like to develop an affection for a car if you've been with one long enough. Kind of like an old girlfriend. Maybe you give it a name, like Betty or Betsy or whatever. It's sort of the same to me, except, I kind of consider my car a buddy. And my car is male, not female. His name's Ken. Ken Adams, to be exact. Ken Adams, he's not looking too good these days. He's got a few scrapes and scratches here and there. There's unsightly tape holding up a side mirror mirror. And he's got plenty of minor scars from literal run-ins with other vehicles. He's getting old. Not too old, but he is a 2000 model. He's got over 124,000 miles, so he's out there. He's running okay for now, but not without some recent car trouble, and a couple of important things like air conditioning, that could use repairs, all of which would be expensive, but hopefully I'll get around to fixing them soon, as I've said for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So, all things considered, I can understand why my brother recently suggested that instead of spending money on repairs for a car that's going to be worth more than, or it's going to be more money than it's worth, why not use that money for a new car? And really, he's right. It would just be easier to get a new car. But after hearing him out, I said respectfully, no, I don't want to get a new car. I was a little annoyed. I reiterated, thanks, but no. I'm staying with my car. Later, when I was alone, I began to think, new car? No. That was the answer, plain and simple. Yet, why was it still playing out in my head? And why was it bugging me so much that he even suggested getting a new car? You mean, get rid of my old car? Get rid of Ken? No, I won't. I can't. It was out of the question. But he wouldn't understand why. No one would really understand why. I didn't even really know. It took me a couple of days to figure out that Ken is not really just a car. He's a part of me. There's just too much of me in that car. There's too much history. I remember the day I took him home, used from that car dealership in the summer of '03. How I drove him straight to my girlfriend's house because I was so excited and so eager to show him off. At the time, I was fresh out of college, still living at home, just gotten my first job. My parents, mercifully, decided I needed to be able to get myself around town, so they finally got my first real car. And it was all mine. My parents had, maybe handed me the keys, but what they really handed to me indirectly was my freedom. I no longer had to rely on family or friends to drive me around, or for my girlfriend to drive 45 minutes out of her way to pick my ass up. No more of that. Now every time I needed to go somewhere, I was going. And Ken Adams was going to take me there. And we've been doing it ever since. At first, I didn't know what to name Ken Adams, but I had help from my girlfriend at the time who would later become my wife and who would eventually become my ex-wife. She had a tendency to name everything. And together we came up with Ken Adams. See, we were really big fans of the show Friends, and if you remember that episode where you find out who the father of Rachel's baby is, Joey reveals that his alter ego, when he doesn't want women to know his real name, was in fact Ken Adams. Yeah. For some reason that was really funny to us, and not coincidentally, my wife kind of always said that I reminded her of Joey, sans all the ladies' man skills. So the name kind of stuck. Now my wife, she loved to name things. She always had. She always has for as long as I've known her. I remember back in college when we went to lobster night at the dorms, and her being allergic to shellfish, instead of eating her lobster, she named it Larry the Lobster. Or how we had this blanket that was blue and furry, so naturally she named him Hank after Beast from X-Men. But mostly it was an inside thing that we kept between ourselves, and it was something that I always loved about her and about us. But it didn't always stop with naming things. Anthropomorphism, I believe it's how it's pronounced. That's what it's called when you associate human characteristics with inanimate objects. So you know how you get attached to something once you name it, even more so when you give it a personality. So just like my car is a name, my wife's car's name is Brown Shugs. And of course, Ken Adams and Brown Shugs were boyfriend and girlfriend immediately. They loved each other, actually. When we exchanged our vows, it was also kind of like Ken Adams and Brown Shugs were also tying the knot. Their relationship pretty much mirrored our own, in that way. When we first moved in together, we would always park next to each other on the street if we could help it. When we would drive in one car and roll past the other, Ken Adams would give a little boom boom. And Brown Shugs would respond a little meep meep. So they even took care of each other when one of them was sick. Because Brown Shugs, she was an older 96 Camry, so she had more car problems. Every once in a while, she would need a jump start. And like her knight in shining armor, there was Ken Adams ready to come to her aid. It's been about 2 years since my wife and I separated. It's been 2 of the hardest years of my life. In that time, I've not only lost my wife, but I lost my best friend. I've had to move back home because I couldn't afford the place we were living in anymore by myself. And I had to leave my job because I could no longer concentrate at work. And anyway, my world really was turned upside down, and I just stopped. Sometimes there were days when it was hard to kind of get up and start my day. You'd think 2 years would be enough time to heal and move on. But it's hard. 2 years have come and gone, and I'm slowly making progress, but I'm still struggling, still stuck, unable to start back up. Which brings me back to Ken. It's funny. I never really had any problems with Ken when my wife and me were together. But almost immediately, when we were on our own, Ken started to experience his own car troubles. I don't really remember the details because I'm not much of a car guy, but something happened with The AC compressor broke, one of the pulleys broke, belts broke. All of it somehow was related to the battery and how it's unable to keep itself charged once it's running. So eventually, Ken Adams had trouble starting, like me. Now, Ken is the one that needs the jump, and there's no brown sugars around to help him. Even when he was able to get started, he couldn't hold his charge, and he'd shut down within a few minutes. For a while, he'd just stand in his parking spot, unable to move, unable to start. It was kind of like he had a broken heart, like me. Then after I got him fixed, we were getting into accidents. It was like he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings. And so, you get scratched somewhere here, or you get clipped by a truck on the highway there. It was kind of like he just stopped caring. Like me. It's weird to have a life 1 minute with your wife, filled with love and all these little characters surrounding you that you were just used to the next minute having nothing but old memories, visions of times you weren't sure actually happened or not. I've stopped thinking about anything we've named or given personalities to, or I just don't have them around me anymore. All I've got is Ken, and all Ken's got is me, because he has no more brown shirts. They had to say goodbye to. And I know one day I'll have to say goodbye to Ken. Maybe when I meet a girl, or when I can afford a new car, but not now. We need each other. Ken's one of the few things that constantly reminds me of the good times that we've had with my wife. That in fact, good times did exist. I'm a big believer in signs, so it can't just be a coincidence that Ken started shutting down around the same time that I did. But I think that's why I don't feel like getting rid of him just yet. Because I know, deep down, this isn't the end of the road for him. He's still got a few more years left. And that despite all the troubles he's had, all that we've been through, they'll eventually be fixed. He'll bounce back to being his good old self. But I think he just needed his time to heal. I think it's just a temporary thing. And I think Ken just misses his girl. Like me. Thank you.
Can we all a drink to Ken Adams? To Ken! I lost my buddy. I had named my car too. It was stolen about a year ago in October, right from Wilson and Lincoln. And Lincoln's in front of a Starbucks. I'm like, it's a 20-year-old Oldsmobile. No one's going to touch it.